Here's part 9 of Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix.
So Amy thought it was a great idea to go back into the horrific store of Orsk to save her coworkers. She drove her vehicle around the back to the employee shipping and receiving entrance and went in through the back where the gummed up lock was, and she went into the employee break room to see if she can collect herself and find everybody. As she stood quietly inside the employee break room, she noticed the walls were covered in flecks of blood. Like someone's hand was bleeding and they were smearing it across the walls and flicking the blood droplets everywhere. Who was hurt? Whose blood was that? She sat there quietly listening, and that's where she heard a noise that sounded like something was skittering inside of the walls. After a brief moment of figuring out where the noise was coming from, she knocked a couple times on the walls to find out the person responding inside of the walls was Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann! How did you get in the walls? Where are you? I got in through a hole I cut in through the storage locker in the hallway. Amy went to that storage closet to find a giant hole cut in by Ruth Ann. A small hole big enough for somebody to wriggle their way through. Amy knelt down right next to the hole and was trying to quietly communicate with Ruth Ann. Ruth, how did you get in there? What are you doing? Are you okay? There's blood everywhere. Amy, I'm trying to hide from the creepy crawlies. They're everywhere. I'm scared, Amy. Ruth Ann tried to emerge from the hole, and that's where Amy saw the horrific aftermath of Ruth Ann's injuries. Ruth Ann was scarred, scratched up, and her fingertips were gnawed down to the bone. Her hands were gushing blood, and all of her fingertips were missing, and all that was left was the bones. Amy grabbed Ruth Ann's wrist and tried to pull her out of the hole, but something big was pulling Ruth Ann back into the hole. She started screaming and yelling. Amy tried to wrench her friend out of the hole, telling Ruth Ann it was going to be okay, and Ruth Ann was being sucked back into the walls. Listen, Amy, it's not your fault, sweetheart. You're not strong enough. Listen, go save everybody else. Amy tried her best to pull her friend out of the hole, but it was too much. Sure, the amount of blood was too slick for Amy to hold on, and she let go. As Ruth Ann was being dragged further and further into the darkness, she looked at Amy one last time and said, "If I can't see them, they can't see me." And she stuck her finger bones inside of her eyes and ripped her eyes out as she disappeared into the hole in the wall. Of course, Amy was absolutely horrified, but she had no space to pause and grieve and panic. She immediately got up and, of course, sobbing, she bolted through the rest of the store to find everybody else. It was life or death at this point. She ran back into the darkness on all the floors of Orsk. Quick little side note about me showing you all the cool things on my shelf. All the bones and skulls you see, I found in the field at work. So everything is sourced straight out of nature, and I love them so much I had to display them on my shelf. A couple seconds before, you saw a burnt over skull, and that there was a giant cougar. I believe it's a juvenile male cougar skull. And at the very top of my shelf is a giant horse skull. I like weird things, and I like showing people my weird things. And that you're looking at right now is a pleco. You know, the little sucker fish people keep in a fish tank at their house. Not sure how that got in the middle of the woods, but it was there. Amy is booking it through the darkness, dodging fingers and hands and arms reaching and grabbing at her and clawing at her from the vents and the darkness of every corner, out of doorways, under beds, out of the kitchen sinks in some of the displays. All of these hands from the dead prisoners of this former prison. And that skull I'm showing you right there, that's a bobcat. And right here is a light up memorial piece I made of my childhood cat. It's pretty weird if you're not into that, but I love it so much. So Amy made it to the location where she last saw Basil, and there he was, slumped over a display. His head was encased in this square cage with a bell on top. His body was suspended by leather straps from a towel rack. His face and body was swollen and bloody from the mass beatings. Amy rushed to him and freed him from his containment, and at that same moment, pipes began to burst and the halls filled with water.